Good afternoon and welcome to the 1 p.m. agenda of the Committee on Housing. It's February 2nd and we are joined today by Vice Chair Drew Kanuha in Conference Room 225. Thank you also to Committee Member Rhodes and Committee Member Favela for joining us this afternoon. And I think we also have Senator Moriwaki as well. This meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on YouTube. You will find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to major technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business at 1 p.m. on Thursday, February 4th, in room 225, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. For all those participating remotely, all testifier audio will be muted and video disabled until shortly before it is your turn to testify. And please note that we will be imposing a 2-minute limit on all oral testimony today. And our staff will remind you when those 2 minutes are up. If there are temporary technical glitches during your turn to testify, we may have to move on to the next person due to time constraints. We appreciate your understanding and remind you that your committee has your written testimony. Okay, with those housekeeping announcements, we'll begin our agenda today with Senate Bill 12 relating to housing objectives, which requires HPHA and HHFDC to accomplish certain housing objectives. Our first testifier is HHFDC with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Chang, Vice Chair Kanuha, members of the committee, Denise Matsubara, HHFDC. We stand on our written testimony offering comments.
Thank you. Our next testifier is HPHA with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. We do stand by our testimony, appreciating the intent. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next testifier is Kathy Lee, followed by Glenn Nagao. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 12? Okay. Do we have any questions, members, for the testifiers? Sorry, hang on 1 second. Okay, we'll move forward now to Senate Bill 26 relating to individual housing accounts, which modifies the individual housing account savings program that exists today. Before we get into the testimony, I just want to state that it is the chair's intention to replace the contents of this bill with Senate Bill 5, for which we've received more positive feedback. Let's start the testimony first with Department of Taxation with comments. Anyone from the Department of Taxation speaking today?
Sorry, Senator, I don't believe they're in the Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you. Next, Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation.
Sorry, we can't really hear too well.
Thank you. Is this better, Chair?
A little bit better. Maybe you could speak up.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a written testimony. Our primary concern is that this is not a popular program. There were, I believe, 83 participants in 2002, which I think is the last year for which we have numbers. And with that kind of statistics, we're wondering if it's worth the time and expenditure of resources to restart or continue the program. Be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions for the testifier? Senator Moriwaki.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Tom, hi, thank you. I am interested in knowing of these 80 in 2002. What has been done with the program? Because this bill also gives appropriation for the managing of the fund.
Senator, I am not sure what has happened to the program since then. I haven't really heard anything about it. And I'm not even sure which agency is managing it, if any.
So, do you know how it worked when it was working? People just put it into a bank account that I don't know if this is where BNF was the administrator at the time, but how did that work? Would you have any information? Who would know that?
The saving institutions would know that. I believe there are testifiers waiting from Hawaii Credit Union League, among others.
Okay.
So they might know.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. We'll wait till we have the credit unions on.
Thank you, and let me remind you that it is Chair's intention to replace the contents of this bill with Senate Bill 5, which sets up a different program, and I would encourage those to read Senate Bill 5 if you have not already. All right, our next testifier is the Hawaii Credit Union League with comments. Cheryl Kakazu Park, Office of Information Practices with comments. And Glenn Nagao with support. Anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 26? Any questions, members? Any further questions, members? Okay, if not, we'll proceed to Senate Bill 36. Senate Bill 36 is relating to rental discrimination. It prohibits discrimination, including in advertisements, based on participating in a housing assistance program. Our first testifier is Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness, Scott Morishige, in support.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I stand my written testimony in support with one suggested amendment, and note that a similar bill passed out of the Senate Consumer Protection Committee this morning with amendments. Thank you.
And thank you. In your testimony, you said that you preferred the language in Senate Bill 1135. Can you tell us why you preferred that version?
No, thank you, Senator. It's mainly in regard to the penalties and in support of amending the penalty to increase it from $500 to $5,000.
Were there any other reasons to prefer SB 1135?
No, that was the primary suggested change.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? If not, we'll go to the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission support.
Thank you, Chair. You have a written testimony. The Hawaii Civil Rights Commission will stand on its written testimony and support, and we will take any questions.
Thank you. If there's any questions? Okay, next in support is HPHA.
Good afternoon. The Housing Authority stands in support of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. ACLU Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Hope Kerpelman. I'm the Legal and Legislative Fellow at the ACLU of Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. The ACLU of Hawaii supports this bill with one proposed amendment to raise the maximum penalty from $500 to $5,000. There's plenty of evidence of housing discrimination based on source of income in Hawaii. All you have to do is go on common rental websites like Craigslist, and you'll find numerous posts that list available apartments with disclaimers that say Section 8 is not accepted. And that's just a sample of the explicit discrimination in these cases. The reason this is troubling is because allowing this type of discrimination can render important housing programs like Section 8 ineffective. Section 8 vouchers are supposed to allow a tenant to use a voucher to offset the cost of a unit in the private housing market. And one of the main intended benefits of this type of assistance is that it makes the existing vacant housing stock affordable, as opposed to having to create new affordable units to fill the need. These types of long-term vouchers have also been proven to lead to extremely positive housing stability outcomes for families experiencing houselessness. And we still have one of the worst houselessness rates in the country in Hawaii. Vouchers and other programs like these are supposed to help fix that, but if landlords can refuse to rent to all of these tenants, they essentially have a veto over these programs. Voucher recipients are left with very few options for housing, if any at all, and they can lose their voucher if they can't find a home before it expires. Federal law does not protect against this kind of discrimination, which is why numerous other states, cities, and counties have already passed ordinances prohibiting this kind of behavior, and these laws are effective. Voucher holders in areas with these laws have already reported higher success rates in finding an apartment. For these reasons, the ACLU of Hawaii strongly supports this measure, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, and we do have your written testimony. I apologize, we skipped the Hawaii State Commission on the status of women in support.
My senator, she's not in the Zoom meeting.
Thank you. Next, we have the League of Women Voters, Hawaii in support. The Hawaii Realtors in opposition. Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice in support. LGBT Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support. David Chi in opposition.
Not present.
Thank you. Glenn Nagao in support. And Kathy Lee in support. Okay. All right. I actually have one question for HPHA.
Sorry, can you hear?
Thank you, Director. The question was, I don't know if you got a chance to take a look at David Chi's testimony on this measure.
I haven't, Senator, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, he talks about the burdensome regulations that Section 8 imposes upon landlords, including requiring audits, contracting with the government, certain restrictions on evictions due to non-payment. Is there any way that your organization, as one of the Section 8 voucher grantors, can help streamline these burdensome regulations?
Thank you. Appreciate the question. The regulations that we have are very minimal. Quite frankly, there is a simple method. Number one, we just inspect the unit to make sure that it's safe, decent, and sanitary. You know, that's simple stuff for their own safety. And then there is just an agreement that the landlord has to sign to accept the money for Section 8. So there is really no reasonable way why any tenants bring in another source of income to pay for the rent should be excluded based on that. What we have heard, the feedback from the landlord themselves in the past was that the perception that the Section 8 tenants, Section 8 recipients are not good people. They may be criminals. They may cause damage. We heard all of that. It's nothing but a perception. But we pay on time. There is minimal paperwork on the landlord's side. We launched a lease in place, just to put it in perspective, if I could, Senator. We launched a lease in place preference, and this is the folks who already have a lease agreement. Some of them, they were tenants for 4 or 5 years, but now that we offer them Section 8, many landlords has refused to take it, just simply not taking it. And some of the reasons we have heard is that we do send them a 1099 at the end of the year, that they have to declare the income that they have received from rent. And that was, I think, one of the issues. In the bigger picture, we opened up, we had 7,000 applicants, which shows 3,000 out of those And at the end of the day, we're about 830 that qualified and landlords were willing to accept. So that big number, but there is no, from the current landlords accepting Section 8, this has not been a complaint.
Very much for that information, Director.
Thank you.
So I noticed that we also had a late testimony from Rachel Key in support. Okay, members, do we have any other questions on SB 36? Okay, thank you very much. We'll next proceed to Senate Bill 53. This is relating to the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. It establishes the Landlord Incentive Program Special Fund to reimburse landowners who participate in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program for repair costs of tenant-caused property damage exceeding the tenant's security deposit. Our first testifier is the Department of Budget and Finance with comments. Okay, next, HPHA in support.
Thank you, Chair and members. We stand in our testimony in support. This is another way of incentivizing those who may have fear that the tenant may cause damage that they are not able to repair, and to encourage others to participate in the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, members?
I do, just a short one.
Senator Moriwaki.
Thank you, Chair. Hakeem, isn't there a program already like this, and is it functioning, or is it just the lack of funding that it's not continued? I thought there was such a program.
Thank you. We had that program, but the funding elapsed because it was specific for that year. We're hoping that this will be on a continuous basis. For us to advertise to the landlord that we are going to offer this, it has to be some kind of surety that if they accept it, that we are able to pay. But that 2 years ago, you are absolutely right. It came, but it was only for that 1 year, and the money lapses right after that.
And so how much do you think should be appropriated I know the need is really much, much greater these days, but what would be a good annual amount?
We're suggesting to start with $100,000 because we don't have a lot of data. We haven't offered this program. And we'll do administrative rules to limit the amount that any landlord can claim. And then we come back, as we have more data, we can come back to the legislature and inform them this is and have a better numbers then.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Okay. If not, we'll move on to Glenn Nagao in support. And then the Hawaii Realtors in support. Okay. And I also just wanted to mention that it is the chair's inclination to defer this measure, but to amend SB 36 by inserting the contents of this measure into SB 36. Okay, any other questions, members? If not, we'll move on to Senate Bill. Was there a question? Here we'll move on to Senate Bill 202. Senate Bill 202, relating to taxation, eliminates the home mortgage interest deduction for second homes under Hawaii income tax law and deposits that revenue into the rental housing revolving fund. Our first testifier is the Department of Taxation with comments.
Chair Chang, members of the committee, Titin Sakata for Department of Taxation. We stand on our testimony, providing comments and available for question. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next, any questions, members? Our next testifier is HHFDC with comments.
Hi, Senator. Looks like she's having technical difficulties.
Okay. Then why don't we next move to Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments?
Thank you, Chair. We have submitted written comments. Our concern here is that it's probably going to be difficult or impossible to segregate how much would have been saved for the second, by disallowing the second home mortgage deduction, because there are plenty of other deduction disallowances, including the P's limitations that I talked about in my testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I actually do have a question. In the last paragraph of your testimony, you state, if the legislature deems the programs and purposes funded by this revolving fund to be a high priority, then it should maintain the accountability for these funds by appropriating the funds as it does with other programs. Earmarking revenues merely absolves elected officials from setting priorities. As you may or may not know, the legislature has a statutory requirement under HRS section 37-52.3 that in which budget and finance are constantly reminding us that special funds need to provide, quote, provide an appropriate means of financing the program or activity and demonstrate the capacity to be financially self-sustaining. I mean, isn't it kind of a do or damned if you do, damned if you don't situation in your testimony here?
Chair, with all due respect, those are the legal standards. That is the theory. Practice is a little bit different. If you take a look at the legislative auditor's reports that come out on special funds every year, there are numerous instances of non-compliance. A lot of funds aren't even reported to the legislature, although they should be.
I'll just observe that that doesn't release the legislature from its statutory obligations.
That's absolutely correct, Senator. It just makes your job more difficult.
Senator Rhodes.
Thanks. Can I go back to Department of Taxation? Have you guys, has DOT priced this out to estimate how much money would be available for the rental housing revolving fund if we didn't allow for a second deducting interest on second mortgages on second houses? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Senator, my apology. We don't have the the revenue estimate available yet, but we'll make sure that when it goes to the Money Committee, we'll include the estimate in our testimony.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? If not, our next testifier is the Hawaii Realtors in opposition. Okay. Leimomi Khan in opposition. And finally, Kathy Lee in support. Okay. Any further questions, members? If not, we'll move on to Senate Bill 607. SB 607 relating to affordable housing removes the construction completion deadline for the Leali'i Affordable Housing Project in Keawe Street Apartments. And our first testifier is HHFDC in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Chang, Vice Chair Kanuha, members of the committee, Denise Matsubara, HHFDC. We support with requested amendment. We learned that parts of the bill may pose conflicts with fair housing laws, and we offer those amendments to try and address that. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Director. I do have one question for you. As you know, similar bill to extend the deadline came up last year. And I asked last year if the deadline extension was sufficient, and I was assured that yes, it would be sufficient, and yet we're back here today with yet another bill completely removing the deadline. Can you explain why we need this bill?
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question. So late last year, we got notice from Shifty that we needed to redo the whole archaeological survey because of new standards. So with that late notice, it did put this project in jeopardy again. We've been meeting with Shifty as well as the director of DLNR on this issue.
But I asked specifically if there were any other potentially unforeseen circumstances that could cause a further extension last year, and I was assured that there would not be.
I don't recall mentioning that we could predict any unforeseen circumstances, and this is certainly one of them. We had no knowledge that Shifty had new standards, and I apologize if that was said, Senator.
Okay. Can you assure this committee that we are not going to come back next year with yet another bill for this project?
You know, at this point, because we're waiting on other agency approvals, Senator, and given the experience thus far, I would not want to say that, but this is, you know, contingent upon further reviews and approvals by other state agencies for which we have no control over.
Thank you. Any further questions, members, for HHFDC?
I do,
Senator
Chair.
Morilaki.
I too am concerned because this has come up a number of times. And I'm just wondering, is the Shifty Concerns major so that we can put this off and it won't be resolved? And there's no end date on the reviews. So can you give us an idea of what the concerns are from Shifty?
I can. If your IT person would let our development branch chief, Dean Minakami, into the room, I believe he is in, he can shed some light. I did want to frame this, that this is a very important affordable housing project for Maui. Yes, it has encountered a number of hurdles, but it has tried so much to survive it, and it is on its path. But I'm going to turn it over to Dean to share some of the challenges with Shifty. Dean Minakami, are you on?
Yep, I got in. To share the challenges that we have. Last year, we were not expecting any delays to Shifty review. There was an archaeological inventory survey done in the 1990s when the project was first proposed, which is for the entire 1,200 acre project site. So last summer, we submitted what's called the 6E review to Shifty, whereby they give all clear that, okay, that we've met the requirements. We gave that review to them in the summer. In December of 2019, we received basically voicemail comments, nothing in writing, just voicemail comments from Shifty requesting more information. We provided that information, and then we didn't hear back until late last year, about September or so, that they were going to require a new inventory survey for the entire 1,200 acre site. That type of a study is very expensive, and it's going to take quite a bit of time to do. So, we could not process the building permits for the project because Shifty clearance is required before building permits can be approved. So right now the project is in limbo, subject to Shifty review and approval.
There, one more question. So are all other approvals needed are completed and it's just the Shifty snag, or are you still in the process of getting other approvals?
They are still working on the building permit approval, which cannot be approved until Shifty clears it. They also are going to require subdivision approval, but we don't foresee those as delaying the project significantly.
And these others are county approvals?
Yes.
So if we don't let this go through, then this project is dead, is that? And all of the done before, the 37 million would be, what's happening to that? Set aside amount construction.
I believe the 37 million would go into the rental housing revolving fund. As far as this project, it would be delayed until they can get Shifty clearance, so the developer may decide to just pull out.
Chair Chang, may I just add a few more comments that, this project has been, years in the making, and to get this far along, I know Senator Moriwaki understands what it takes to get a project this far, and to have a developer, who has a track record of being able to build, and I believe this is Bigley, Ikaika Ohana building this. They do have a track record of being able to deliver, but like all other projects, and once the projects are this far along in the pipeline, we really try and want to support them as much as possible, because to get a new one in the pipeline just takes several years and another commitment. So that's some context for this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
Any
one
further
more
questions?
Yeah, I
Senator
just one more
Moriwaki.
question. So the Shifty Concerns, is that overcomable? I mean, I don't know if they're just asking questions that, you had something more informal before and now more formally they've got questions that you can answer, or are there real problems with the property itself?
The request that they have to us, which is to prepare a new inventory survey for the 1,200-acre parcel, that is a substantial request. That will require us to expend several $100,000 for the study, and it will likely take, I'd say, a minimum a year, if not more. These type of studies typically take quite a bit of time to prepare and to have approved. And I note that we didn't think this would be an issue because we did prepare the study when the project was first conceived. And we never expected Shifty would require a new study. They were consulted for the 201H application. They've been consulted for other projects in the area in the past, and this is the first time that they made us aware that they were going to require a new study.
But Dean, is it not correct that we have been meeting with Shifty along with DLNR chair or director to try and figure out a path forward to maybe confining the new study to be just of the project area? Is that off the table?
We have, I know we've had discussions on that, but nothing in writing so far.
And if it were just the project site for the building, that would be like how much of the acreage is it that would cut down the time frame?
Well, the project site is roughly 30 acres. So, of course, it will be much quicker to survey 30 acres than, 1,200 acres. So it should move quicker. But, still, inventory surveys do take time to prepare and process. It's not unusual for it to take, 6 months to a year, even for a smaller site.
Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions, members? Okay, if not, we'll move forward to the next testifier, the Kihei Community Association, in support.
Aloha, Chair. Mike Moran for the Kihei Community Association. We did submit our written testimony. And I would just plead with the senators. I'm not aware of all these reasons why that I'm hearing from you and in discussion with these departments. And I can see why it really is a challenge. But for our community, I mean, I'm in South Maui, this is in West Maui, but these people put up a similar project in South Maui about a year ago. It was finally opened. And our community, and I imagine your community as well, is desperately in need of truly affordable housing. And when we see local families moving into a brand new 2-bedroom, 2-bath project at truly affordable rates, rental rates, and a building that's going to be there for 65 years, these are the kind of projects we have been begging for years. And when we got the one in Kihei, ours was the first one, the county council, the administration said, who are these guys? How can they do this? So there's county government support. I don't work for the county, but I can tell you, I follow it, and the county is truly in favor of this on all levels. And it's most unfortunate this came in, but who will be punished if this is pulled? It'll be worthy community members who have been waiting for years for a truly affordable rental project. We got the first one in Kihei. This is one of two that they're doing up on the west side, and they are working on another one in Kihei. Probably start the process this summer. So we're just begging the senators to please consider that. We can see what you're going through, but who's going to be hurt by it? It's not going to be a state administration entity. It's going to be our community, a worthy local community that's in desperate need. So I don't have much knowledge to offer, but I can tell you that I know these people very well. I met Mr. Bigley, and they're truly honest folks, and they do have an outstanding track record. That's about the only input I can offer to your committee today, sir.
Thank you. We have late testimony from Maui County Mayor Victorino in support. Okay, any further questions, members? Okay, thank you. If not, we'll go to Senate Bill 746. Senate Bill 746 relates to housing and prohibits planned community and homeowners associations from preventing members from renting out their single-family dwelling units when the duration of the tenancy is 6 months or longer. Our first testifier is Associa in opposition. Our next testifier is Jane Sugimura in opposition. Kathy Lee in support. We have late testimony from Joy Schoenecker in opposition and Philip Nerney in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 746? Okay, our next bill today is Senate Bill 749, our final bill today. Senate Bill 749 relating to the Public Housing Authority, which allows the Hawaii Public Housing Authority to build non-subsidized housing. First testifier is HHFDC in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee, Denise Matsubara, HHFDC. We respectfully oppose this measure. In our written testimony, we give a recap on the brief history in 1997 when the two agencies were together, and in 2005 when the legislature found that the burden of administering the public housing program in the state overshadowed its ability of the corporation to pay sufficient attention to the finance and development of affordable housing. And then we separated again in 2006. It's just an iteration that HHFDC's mission is financing and development, and that's our primary focus. And so to avoid diversion of the state resources, we feel that the public is best suited by what the legislature deemed appropriate back in 2006. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Director. I do have a question. As you know, over the last several years, with the full support of the legislature, HPHA has embarked on a number of projects to develop housing that is not public housing, such as School Street, such as Mayor Wright, such as KPT, which is a mixed income, mixed use project. Are you saying in your testimony today that HPHA should cease those efforts and hand them over to your agency?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, simply put, the mission of HHFDC has been the finance and development arm. So if asked for our opinion is that we retain that core mission, and that's our opinion. That's not saying that we're not willing to or won't work closely with public housing, because we will and we do. Thank you.
How would giving HPHA this authority prevent HHFDC from doing anything that it's currently doing?
Well, you'd have to have a funding mechanism and a resource to do the projects. I don't know of any mechanism within public housing that generates its revenue to fund development. So it would be a diversion of state resources.
So you're saying that they don't have the funding to undertake non-public housing development? Then why are you saying the legislature has not been funding HPHA's efforts to, for instance, redevelop School Street?
I don't know of a funding mechanism that they have in public housing to do development, ongoing development is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Members, do we have any other questions for HHFDC? Okay. If not, our next testifier is HPHA with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. The HPHA supports this bill for a lot of reasons. I think, first of all, we do also support the separation of our agencies, HHFDC and HPHA. I think it's great that they do financing. But part of our mission when we have 10, 15,000 people on the wait list is to find a creative way to increase our inventory. The model as it exists now, it's not to build public housing and put them all in one area. It's to have mixed income, mixed use development. In fact, HUD encourages this, and the NOFAs that come out, it's always there. So we're talking about, for this bill, we support it because we're talking about our properties that we own. And when we develop them, we should have that flexibility to develop all kind of income and no income restrictions, and let the developers be creative and build. We certainly do not support that we embark on any of the function that HHFDC does. I think an example to look at it, the HHFDC, when we team up with the other developers, we become a developer, and we do apply for tax credit in HHFDC, and we continue that. As you have mentioned, Chair, we do have multiple projects that are ongoing in our properties, and to even pencil those projects, we have to think outside. There is a requirement for us. All the contracts, ACC contract that we have to with HUD, when we develop, we do a replacement 1-for-1 for the public housing, but any increase has to have that flexibility to make the project work, and for social needs. It's always great to have different incomes and not just have concentration of poverty. And obviously, when there is a funding need, we'll do what we always do. We'll come to the legislature, explain what the project is and what the need is. And we are here to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Director. Director, you heard Director Isari Matsubara's testimony just now. What do you have to say to HHFDC's concerns?
I understand. This is our sister agency, and Denise is my sister. But I think this is a brother and sister doing the work for the benefit of the state. We embark on the projects that we have along the rail to bring as many affordable housing and as many variety of income housing to the community. And they have a really big task and busy with all of the other developers and financing components. I think we'll continue to work together, and I do not believe that this bill will hinder anyone's ability to do the work.
HHFDC said that allowing HPHA to build non-subsidized housing is against its purpose and is inefficient. Do you agree with those comments?
I don't think so at all. I mean, I think our purpose is to provide housing, to provide affordable housing. And sometimes to build affordable housing, you have to look at other incomes to make the formula work, to pencil in the project.
Thank you, Director. Members, any questions, further questions for the Director? Senator Moriwaki.
Thank you, Chair. Hakeem, I want to go back to what Director Iseri Matsubara said about the possible conflict or overlap of your functions. And I'm just trying to understand the separation between the two agencies. And my understanding is that you have your own properties, and what you're talking about, or what this bill would help you to do, is to commercialize those properties and being able to be more self-sufficient in terms of building. Is that what's happening here if we pass this bill?
I think a lot has happened since 2006, and the need for housing is greater than ever. I think we complement. We do not. We have our own highways. Sometimes we meet an intersection. For example, we've been working for 2 or 3 years on bringing School Street, as Senator mentioned earlier, into fruition, working with the developers and getting things done. And when it's time to apply for a tax credit, we are going to put an application. The developer is going to put an application by February 17th, like any other developer. We've been working together. I don't think we've ever stepped on each other, and we certainly do not plan. Our missions are clear, and their missions is also clear. And I think we do have a great working relationship to be able to continue. The 4 projects that's been mentioned is just an example, but there are many. But we only concentrating, HPHA only concentration on properties and lands that we own, and where HHFDC can do any other property with any other developer, anybody can apply.
So this would allow you to be much more self-sufficient funding too if you commercialize your properties. Is that what this bill would help you to do on your properties?
It would, and I think all the best practices in worldwide, not just the U.S., is the idea of only public housing. It's dead. It hasn't worked. In fact, many large housing authorities, NYCHA and others, they completely demolish all the public housing and then build a vibrant mixed income, mixed use development. And I think it is the only way. And also here in Hawaii, the idea just to maintain a 1-floor housing or 2-floor, it's gone. We have to go up. And you cannot, for example, let's take Mayor Wright. We've taken 364 units to put in 2,500 units. You cannot just build all public housing, nor can we increase the amount of public housing due to fair cloth law that the federal government. So I think in short, I don't see this as us overstepping or even stepping into the great work that HHFDC does, but it will allow us to do our work and continue to provide as many housing as the state legislature allow us to have.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do we have further questions for the HPHA Director? Okay, if not, let's move forward with testimony from Kathy Lee in support and Eric Horn in support.
Hi, aloha Chair, aloha Committee. I support this measure. I stand on my testimony and I'm willing to answer any questions. I do want to summarize the moral of the story. Government action in housing, for too long it's viewed as revenue negative, a cost burden. We've seen it here already in the 2 earlier testimonies. You're worried about competing for funds, having housing compete for tax dollars. If it's competing for tax dollars, it's a competing priority. But any competing priority is not a true priority. What this bill does is it lets housing fund itself. So it won't have to compete for those tax dollars anymore. As Senator Moriwaki has stated, it allows them to be more self-sufficient. And that's why this bill needs to move forward and pass. If we want to have a culture and a community that isn't going to suffer and tolerate all the ills of inadequate housing, the lives delayed, the lives damaged, and the lives displaced, then we have to hold the attitude simply that housing cannot be forced to compete and scrap for the tax dollars. It must be a priority outright. So thank you for your time.
You members, any questions? Okay, finally, we have late testimony from the Land Use Research Foundation of Hawaii in opposition. Anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 749? Okay, if not, at this time, we'll go into recess and we'll be back from recess with decision making. Thank you and welcome back to the Committee on Housing's 1 p.m. hearing here on February 2nd, 2021. We are back for decision making and we'll start with Senate Bill 12 relating to housing objectives. Chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure unamended. And Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair's recommendation for SB 12 is to pass unamended. Chair Chang?
Aye.
The Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Moriwaki?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Favela?
Aye.
Chair, you have 5 ayes and recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Our next measure is Senate Bill 26 relating to individual housing accounts. We'll be moving this bill forward and we'll be passing it with amendments. And the first amendment will be to replace it with the contents of Senate Bill 5, as I mentioned earlier during the hearing. Senate Bill 5 is a more flexible program. It's a program that is designed to have more participation than the individual housing account program of the past. And that's our preferred language. We'll also have technical and non-substantive amendments as well. Members, any questions or discussion? If not, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments.
Chair's recommendation for SB 26 is to pass with amendments. Chair Chang?
Aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Moriwaki?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Favela?
Aye.
Chair, 5 ayes. Recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much. Our next. Senator Favela, did you want to say something? Okay. Our next measure is SB 36 relating to rental discrimination. The recommendation from the chair will be to pass with amendments, and we have several amendments, including taking the contents of Senate Bill 53 and adding them to this measure. That's the next measure on the agenda today, so that both will be in one package, in one vehicle. We'll also take HPHA's amendment to appropriate $100,000 to participate in the landlord reimbursement program. We'll take the amendment from several testifiers, including the governor's coordinator on homelessness and the ACLU, to increase the maximum penalty to $5,000. We'll take the amendment from the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women on the paragraph about discrimination against women. The recommendation from the Appleseed Center to include a more detailed explanation of the sources of income covered, and also to clarify that it's unlawful to not only refuse to engage in a rental transaction, but also to refuse to continue the rental by expelling the tenant, for example. And then finally, not finally, but we'll also take David Chi's recommended amendment to clarify the definition of housing assistance program. And finally, we'll have technical non-substantive amendments. And in the committee report, we'll note that the requirements, we'll note the concerns from David Chi about the burdensome paperwork and regulations, but we'll also note HPHA's observation that those requirements are really quite minimal. Okay, so again, the recommendation is to pass SB 36 with amendments.
Chair's recommendation for SB 36 is to pass with amendments. Chair Chang?
Aye.
I vote aye. Senator Moriwaki.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair, 5 ayes. Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 53, the contents we just inserted into the previous bill, Senate Bill 36, so we'll be deferring Senate Bill 53. Our next measure is Senate Bill 202 relating to taxation, and the chair's recommendation will be to pass unamended. In the committee report, we'll note the contradiction between the Tax Foundation's testimony and the requirements that we have of HRS 37-52.3. So the recommendation is to pass this unamended.
Chair's recommendation for SB 202 is to pass unamended. Chair Chang.
Aye.
I vote aye. Senator Moriwaki.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Reservations?
Chair, you have 5 ayes. Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 607 relating to affordable housing. Chair's recommendation will be to pass with amendments, and we'll take HHFDC's recommended amendments. Any discussion, members? Okay, the recommendation is to pass with amendments.
Recommendation for SB 607 is to pass with amendments. Chair Chang.
Aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Moriwaki.
Reservation.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair, you have 5 ayes. Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 746 relating to housing. Unfortunately, there was no real support for this measure, and so we will be deferring this measure. And finally on our agenda today is Senate Bill 749 relating to the Public Housing Authority. The recommendation will be to pass with amendments. So basically, the chair's intended direction for this bill is to delete the word public in HRS section 356D-11 in section 2 of this bill. So all those references to public housing projects will simply become housing projects or housing. We'll delete the definition of public housing project, or complex from 356D-1 and instead replace it with a definition for housing in 356D-1, and we'll take HPHA's suggested definition of housing, but leave out the last clause of HPHA's suggested definition. We will not be taking the definition of unrestricted as to the affordability or the income level of its occupants. Instead, we will simply be silent on the income level and affordability. And in the committee report, we'll note that we observe the conflicting testimony of the 2 sister agencies and that we encourage better coordination between sister agencies like this in the future. All right, so the recommendation from the chair will be to pass with amendments.
Chair's recommendation for SB 749 is to pass with amendments. Chair Chang.
Aye.
I vote aye. Senator Moriwaki.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair, 5 ayes. Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. There being no further business, this hearing is adjourned.